Today, let's walk through some tips and tricks for sewing with fake fur. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are talking about using fake fur. So fake fur is a really fun fabric. Normally one side is furry, the other side is going to be much smoother, and that's the wrong side. But the first thing to notice about fake fur is that it normally has a direction or a grain. So the way that the fur is laying, and you want to pay attention to that, especially when you are doing your seams. Now the second piece of advice that I would give for fake fur is because it is so messy, you want to keep it in its own separate bag, its own separate bin. You want to keep that away from your other fabrics, just because it does have a tendency to peel, especially where you have cut the edge. So as you can see here, this edge, it has some of this fur sort of coming off, and just because of that, you really want to keep whatever extra fur that you have in a separate area. Now, when it comes time to actually working with this, you can use pins or quilting clips. It's a lot easier to pin from the back or from the wrong side. And for preference, I personally like pins better, but quilting clips work just as well for fake fur, so really it's a matter of personal opinion on which one you want to use. They will both hold your fabric in place and make it easier for you to sew. Now, when it comes time to sewing on your machine, fake fur normally does not have any stretch to it, so you can use just a universal needle, but you are going to want a bigger size, so normally around the 90/14 to 116. And then, of course, when you are working with this, you do want to have some sort of edge finishing, whether that's using a serger or you're adding a lining to your fabric so that you're not worrying about that fake fur coming undone. Now, when it comes time to actually working with this and cutting it, you can use your regular fabric shears. Of course, it's a lot easier to cut from the wrong side of that fabric, and be prepared for after you cut it, there will be a mess all over the floor. Now, when it comes time to actually sewing, I'm able to use a regular presser foot. I had no issue when I was sewing through this fake fur. I have seen some people talk about using a walking foot just to make it a little easier if you are struggling with getting both those layers under, since it is so thick. That would definitely be a personal preference and for you to try out though to see what it's like. After you get a seam done, one thing you will want to do with fake fur is grade your seams. So one of those edges, you're just going to be cutting very close, probably like a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that it lays a little smoother. A lot of the time with fake fur, you're not actually going to be ironing this as it could melt. So you just want to make sure that your seams are as small as possible and not too bulky. So here's an example of some seams that I had done for a jacket. Now, one of the funny things that I have this video of is I actually go through and comb it so that it lays a lot smoother. And one of the things that I love about this is it makes it so you can't see the seams as much. It makes it look a little more hidden and more just continuous fur. Now, one item I will talk about is when you add buttonholes. Buttonholes in fake fur can be really difficult. I looked up a lot of different ways to do this, and the one that I found worked the best was actually cutting some of that fur off for where the buttonhole is going to go. So this makes it a much smaller area. You won't even notice when it comes time to actually putting that buttonhole in. And then you're going to be marking where you want that button to sit, so the start and the stop, which is what I did here. And then you can just take your buttonhole like normal. Now for this, I did guide the buttonhole a little bit more than I normally would because of the thickness of the fabric, but overall this does work as a technique for adding buttonholes into fake fur. So what other questions do you have about working with fake fur? Let me know in the comments. I absolutely love working with fake fur. It is so fun. It can turn into such cool projects, and I hope that this gave you some tips and tricks for using it if you're using it for Halloween costumes. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.